JEY Talks Radio.
Okay, picture this. You're at a family gathering, maybe a wedding, and everyone's buzzing about who's next to get hitched. You feel that familiar pressure, the weight of expectation, like somehow your life isn't complete without that ring on your finger. It's a question that's echoed through generations. Are we all destined to be married? Today, we're taking a deep dive into this very question, guided by JEY's insightful podcast on the topic. Get ready for some aha moments, because we're going beyond the surface and exploring the why behind these deeply ingrained beliefs.
It's fascinating how this pressure plays out, isn't it? I mean, think about those wedding movies, those romantic comedies where finding the one is portrayed as the ultimate goal. It's everywhere. And for many, this societal drumbeat starts early.
Absolutely. And it's not just pop culture, right? Jay points out how, for many people of faith, especially Christians, the pressure is amplified even further. It's practically ingrained in the culture.
Right. Starting with Genesis. The creation story itself highlights marriage, Adam and Eve, the original power couple. It's seen as part of God's blueprint, setting the stage for how we view marriage even thousands of years later.
And then there's that often quoted verse from Genesis 2:18, "It is not good for man to be alone." That's a heavy hitter, often used to reinforce the idea that we're all wired for marriage.
It's a powerful statement for sure. But what's interesting is how Jay unpacks the biblical concept of marriage as more than just companionship. Dives into the idea of a covenant, a sacred promise made before God. This isn't just signing a contract. It's a profound commitment with spiritual weight, reflecting God's own love and faithfulness.
Also brings up the whole procreation aspect, linking it back to God's command to be fruitful and multiply in Genesis 1:28. So there's a strong case to be made for marriage being woven into the very fabric of creation and faith.
Absolutely. But here's where Jay throws a curveball. That's a compelling counterargument, suggesting that the Bible also honors singleness as a legitimate and even commendable way of life.
It's like flipping the script on us, right? Points to 1 Corinthians 7:7, where Paul, a prominent figure in early Christianity, says, "I wish that all of you were as I am, but each of you has your own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that."
And what's striking here is that Paul doesn't present singleness as a consolation prize. He elevates it as a gift, a unique and valuable path in its own right. It challenges us to reconsider, what if singleness isn't about lacking something, but about receiving a different kind of abundance, a different way to serve and connect with God?
JEY Talks Radio.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're exploring the question of whether everyone is destined for marriage, diving deeper into Jay's podcast and uncovering some fascinating insights about singleness.
You know, it's interesting how Jay connects this idea of gifts to a broader historical context within Christianity, drawing from a long tradition of individuals who chose to devote their lives entirely to God, often taking vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience.
Oh, really? Tell me more about that. I've heard of monks and nuns, but I didn't realize it connected to this whole idea of singleness as a gift.
Right. It's called the consecrated life. And these individuals aren't seen as lacking something because they're not married. It's a completely different way of living, fully dedicated to spiritual pursuits and service to others.
That's a whole new perspective. It's not about what they're giving up, but what they're gaining, right?
Precisely. And Jay makes a really compelling point. We tend to focus on the partnership and procreation aspects of marriage, which are obviously important, but we sometimes overlook the unique opportunities that singleness offers.
Yeah, like the freedom to focus entirely on God's work without the added responsibilities that come with family life.
Exactly. It's not to say that married people can't serve God effectively, but it's about recognizing that different paths lead to fulfilling our God-given purpose.
It's not about which path is better, but about recognizing the value and dignity of each path, right?
Absolutely. And that's where Jay challenges us to dig deep into our own hearts. Do we see singleness as a gift or a burden? Are we placing more value on the gift of marriage simply because society expects it?
Wow, those are tough questions, but important ones to grapple with if we want to break free from the expectations that can lead to so much unhappiness.
And you know, one of the things Jay said that really struck me was, the one who has willed you to be single, don't you think knows what he is doing?
That's powerful. It speaks to the idea that God has a plan for each of us, whether we're called to marriage or singleness, and that his plan is ultimately for our good.
Exactly. And it challenges us to trust in his timing and his will, even when it doesn't align with our own desires or societal expectations.
So how do we begin to navigate these complex issues? How do we reconcile the biblical teachings on marriage and singleness with the very real pressures we face in our culture?
That's a great question, and it's something that deserves a whole deep dive of its own. But I think a good place to start is by examining our own hearts and asking ourselves some honest questions.
Like what kinds of questions?
Well, for starters, what are our motivations for wanting to be married? Are we seeking fulfillment and validation primarily through a romantic relationship? Or are we open to finding those things in other areas of our lives, like our relationship with God, our service to others, or our passions and pursuits?
It's so easy to get caught up in the fairy tale, isn't it? We see it everywhere, those picture-perfect weddings, the happy couples. We can start to think, that's it. That's the only way to be truly happy.
The powerful image, no doubt. And, we've talked about the religious side, how it ties into our understanding of God's plan, but are we looking for someone to complete us?
Right, like that saying, you have to love yourself before you can love someone else.
Exactly. When we find our worth in Christ, in who we are in Him, then relationships, all kinds, romantic or not, they start from a healthier place, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's like Jay said, the one who willed you to be single, don't you think knows what he is doing? That really hit me. God's got a plan, marriage or not, it's for our good.
It takes trust, though, doesn't it? To believe that even when things don't make sense to us, God sees the bigger picture. He's got it handled.
He does. So how do we actually live this out? I mean, there's so much pressure from society, from our churches sometimes. How do we balance that with what we feel called to do?
Honestly, start with God. Talk to Him. Prayer, that's key. Ask for guidance, for clarity, for strength to follow His lead, even when it's tough, when it's not what we expected.
And we don't have to do it alone, right? Having a good community around us, that's got to help.
100%. Find those people, mentors, a small group, anyone who will be real with you, encourage you in your faith, but also keep you accountable. And hey, it's okay to say you're struggling, to ask for help. Talking it out, that's how we grow.
This whole conversation, it reminds me, whether we're single or married, it doesn't define us. Our worth, it comes from being God's children. Our purpose, serving Him with everything we've got.
That's it. That's the heart of it. And yeah, there'll be ups and downs, twists and turns along the way. That's life, right? But we're not alone. We've got each other. We've got our faith communities, and we've got God. His love is constant, and He'll guide us every step of the way.
This deep dive, it's given us so much to think about. What are your takeaways? Let's keep this conversation going. Share your thoughts with us on social media. And until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
JEY Talks Radio.